Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, I am really excited to share our next step in surveying our families who are currently enrolled in our LosAl Home program. So just a little background information, a reminder to our community as well as our board that in August, we had families choose to make a year-long commitment to the district's 100% remote schooling option, LosAl Home. And simultaneously to that, the district made a commitment to survey families that selected LosAl Home to garner interest in having their child or their children return to a traditional school site for the second semester. And so I wanted to just review with the board our timeline of the upcoming placement survey that we had committed to our community. So this is the week of November 9th, and Education Services will be sending out a communication email to all of our LosAl Home families, reminding them about the upcoming survey, as well as providing some pertinent information that parents can think about in advance of the survey, so they're really able to make an informed decision when the survey is released. We'll be releasing our placement survey November 23rd and firmly closing that survey on December 4th. So we'll be communicating this week. Families will have 3 weeks to really think about their placement decision, and then 2 weeks to complete the survey on behalf of each child enrolled in our LosAl Home program. And then from December 7th to January 14th, we'll be working here at the district along with our site partners and analyzing that placement survey, as well as looking at any staffing transitions we can make and updates for second semester. And then no later than January 15th, we'll be communicating out placement communication to all of our LosAl Home families, so that they'll have a minimum of a 2-week notice of any changes in a placement request as we start our second semester on February 1st. And so our communication this week to our LosAl Home families is really going to be differentiated based on the level of education of each student. Because as you can imagine, transitioning back to an elementary school, middle school, or high school has different considerations as a family. And so the purpose of getting out early is really to make sure that our families have plenty of choice to weigh the considerations of their placement as they're looking at where they would like their children placed for a second semester. And so the first choice for our LosAl Home families will be to remain in LosAl Home from February 1st to June 15th. So the complete second semester. And survey choice 2 will be if a family was to prefer to return to the traditional school setting for second semester, February 1st to June 15th. And then just a reminder, and it's something that we've really been communicating since the infancy of the choice our community faced in August, is that this survey really is an option for families to give us their interest, but ultimately it's not a guarantee, the preference that they indicate. Our ability to grant any or all requests will be based on the analysis of the information that we received through the survey. So really the percentage of students and percentage of our staffing that we can reallocate back to our school sites. But the ability to remain enrolled in LosAl Home is guaranteed to those families who chose that remote schooling option for first semester. And so some information to consider. For families that are considering remaining in LosAl Home for the second semester, the considerations really are the same for all students enrolled TK through 12. And that is that they're making a commitment to finish the 2020-21 school year remotely. And so the selection is permanent for the second semester. Families, if they have more than one child in LosAl Home, they can select different placement preferences for each of their children. So it really is a student-by-student selection. If I had a kindergartner that I was looking to put back into the traditional school setting, I could choose a preference for my middle schooler to remain in LosAl Home. So it's a student-by-student selection and preference, not a family or household preference. If families are considering returning their child to our brick and mortar or traditional school setting for second semester, and their students are currently enrolled in transitional kindergarten through 8th grade, there are a couple other factors to consider. Selecting to return to a traditional school setting does not mean that a student would return to their regular school of attendance or that they would remain with their current teacher. Students will be placed where there's available space. So some other things that family should consider as they're looking at this option are things like transportation and childcare. So we are currently only operating busing or transportation for students on an IEP that specifically have transportation written into their individualized education plan. So if your family typically has their child walk to the community school, their home school, which is maybe just a couple blocks from the school site, and they're entertaining the idea of returning to the traditional school setting, but they're placed at a different elementary school, we really want to make sure that they're thinking they could be placed at any of our 6 elementary schools or either middle school based on our enrollment and section availability. And so transportation and childcare should be something that families do take into consideration as they're making this choice. Also, families should consider that when they're choosing their traditional school setting, that means that they're really committing to the hybrid schedule or a full-day schedule. Currently, we are operating in the hybrid schedule, but there may come a time when our school sites open in a full-day schedule. And so this selection is permanent for the second semester, February 1st through June 15th. So families should anticipate that their children or child could be participating in the hybrid or a full-day schedule at any of the levels. In addition, our students who are currently enrolled in LosAl Home in the 6th through 12th grade should also be aware that a student's schedule will change as they transition on to our brick and mortar campuses. And in addition, that may have a change to their elective. We are currently running some electives that are LosAl Home only because we needed to increase the number of electives that we could facilitate completely remotely. It would be very difficult, for example, to facilitate ceramics online. So we created unique electives for our LosAl Home students that we wouldn't be traversing back onto our brick and mortar campuses. In addition, coming back at the high school or middle school could mean at some point that we're not operating in a hybrid schedule and students could find themselves in a full-day schedule. And then once again, when families give us their placement recommendation for next semester, it is permanent. Much like the process that we went through to put our LosAl Home classes and sections together for first semester, we're going to be doing the business right of reallocating staff and looking at student preferences for placement. So once the semester is in full swing, it's very challenging to make changes within that system. The older the student, the more challenging as we're looking at singletons in a master schedule and really needing to meet the unique academic needs of our students. And so to really make sure that our families are prepared to make an informed decision, Education Services will be partnering with Dr. Lepore as well as Mr. Larson, who are currently the administrators overseeing our TK-12 LosAl Home program, to offer families an opportunity to join us for some Zoom question and answer sessions. And so the purpose of these sessions really is for families that hear this information, that receive our email this week and still have questions. Or maybe they just want to meet with someone live, synchronously, hear this information, and process it another time. And so we're hosting 3 separate Q&A sessions, 2 targeted at our elementary audience. So Tuesday, November 17th at 5 p.m., Wednesday, November 18th at 9 a.m. for our TK5 families. And then we're offering a 6/12 Q&A session on Thursday, November 19th at 5 p.m. All of the information as well as the URLs to join these sessions will be shared with our LosAl Home families and the communication that comes from Ed Services this week. And then the placement survey is going to roll out November 23rd and close on December 4th. And really, families will be receiving an email with directions on how to select their preference for placement for each of their children that are enrolled in LosAl Home for the second semester. And they'll be doing that via ARIES, our student information system. We are asking that all families in LosAl Home log into ARIES and select a placement preference for the second semester. For families that do not log into ARIES and select that placement preference by December 4th, the default for those students will be to remain in LosAl Home. Now, as a team here at the district office and in partnership with our LosAl Home administrative team, we are going to do our due diligence the week after that survey closes to reach out and remind those families who have not selected a preference. But we will be using the default of remaining in LosAl Home for those families who do not log in and choose a preference through our student information system. And then just a reminder, once again, returning to the traditional school setting is not guaranteed simply by indicating a preference on this survey. It is an interest survey which is giving us the information we need to make staffing recommendations to grant and honor as many requests of our students' families as we possibly can. And so the ability to remain in LosAl Home is guaranteed for those families who indicate the preference to remain in LosAl Home. For a family who indicates the preference to return to the traditional school setting, when they receive information for us, that will be their placement for the next school year, as we will have discounted staffing on the LosAl Home side to make room for the possible potential of additional desire to return to our brick and mortar campuses. And so that district analysis between December 6th and January 14th really is going to be important to the number of requests that we can honor. And so we will be working diligently to make and grant placement requests for a student to return to the traditional school setting, really based upon 3 criteria. Number 1, the number of students at each grade level that are wanting to return. Number 2, how many open seats do we currently have in our traditional school settings, which in our classrooms and sections that we could fill with students who are currently enrolled in LosAl Home. And then thirdly, using the information we have, doing a direct staffing analysis to determine a transition of some LosAl Home classes or sections onto our traditional school settings or campuses. And so we are anticipating no later than January 15th. Our goal is always sooner, but by January 15th, that we would have an email communication out to all of our LosAl Home families, clearly indicating them the placement outcomes. And so we'll be sending an email to each family currently enrolled in LosAl Home to share the status of the placement request for semester 2. So families who have chosen to remain in LosAl Home will receive a verification email that we still currently have them enrolled to attend during second semester. And then families who preferred to return to a traditional school setting will be notified if their preference was able to be granted and then which school site their student would attend for semester 2. Now, clearly, our goal is to place as many students as possible in their regular school of attendance. Our secondary goal would be to keep students with the same teacher, potentially, that they've had in the LosAl Home experience. But those will really be tightly tied to the information that we garner as parents choose a preference for the placement they would like their student for the second semester. And so simultaneously to this, we'll also be opening up an interest survey for those families who are currently participating in our traditional pathway and potentially may have an interest to transition over to remote schooling for the second semester. And so traditional pathway families will receive an email from their current school principal with directions on how to indicate their preference to transition to LosAl Home for the second semester. Now, we're not asking for all traditional pathway families to log into Aries and select a preference. We're only asking those families who are currently in a brick and mortar school who are interested in participating in LosAl Home for the spring semester to log into Aries and select a new preference for the second semester. And then we'll be working with our families who are currently on the LosAl Home waitlist to make sure that they receive a separate email communication reminding them that we do need them, although they're on our current waitlist, to also log into Aries and make sure they're making that selection for LosAl Home for the second semester. And then it's really important to note, no different than the students who are at LosAl Home, who we may or may not be able to grant their request to return to a traditional school, the same is true with our families who are on the traditional pathway. Transitioning to LosAl Home for the second semester isn't a guarantee. We're going to perform the same analysis of these requests to determine if we can grant any and all requests for students to go remote from the brick and mortar pathway for second semester. And so just a quick reminder of the timeline. This week, Ed Services will be communicating to all families in LosAl Home about the upcoming options. We'll be hosting 3 Zoom sessions before our survey response period begins on November 23rd. Our survey response period will end on December 4th. The district team, in collaboration with our site teams, will be working December 7th through January 14th to do an analysis of their request, make any staffing updates or transitions, and then no later than January 15th, just in time for February 1st, the start of the second semester, we will be communicating with all families at LosAl Home on what their placement, their final placement was for the second semester. And so I'd love to answer any questions that the board has.
If you could just go back to that timeline, I just want to reiterate. So this has been really important to us early on, even as we talked with, master scheduling has been extremely complex in this process. And we had to make tweaks even afterwards to really also accommodate the number of students in a classroom so that we could keep that balanced and be cognitive of the requirements with social distancing and desk shields and how much a classroom can hold. So this really was a request for many who are going to be working on master schedules that if we could have the information as early in December as possible, we'll give them more time to thoughtfully create a master schedule as opposed to creating a master schedule in 2 weeks. And so our commitment to families was to survey them in December. We want to give them 2 weeks to take the survey the week before the Thanksgiving break and the week after, but even giving them early notification prior, hey, this is coming, so tune in and know that that 2-week window has to be really firm, because we have a huge amount of work to synthesize and assess during December 7th through 14th. I can guarantee you our principals and assistant principals who work on master schedule will be working over the winter holiday trying to make sure. And then if we need to hire any additional staffing, or if we need to adjust teachers' schedules, they also have a right to be notified with as much advance notice as well. And so that's why this timeline is really important, that we are going to stick to it. It's going to be critical for our families to respond by December 4th.
This is
I just wanted to say that listening to this plan, it's very well thought out, it's sequential, and it is going to be so much work. And I just want to say to our parent community, we want to do what is best for your child. Please answer the survey in a timely manner, and we will try the best we can. But I just looking at that, I think this is a master schedule that could involve 9,500 kids. Good luck.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Let's say and you noticed it on here when you were giving your presentation, that they may not necessarily get their homeschool. And what if they're going to be told that at the onset, so they will understand when they get a school other than their homeschool? There is no way they can return to LosAl Home. That they've made that decision when they did the survey, so they have to go to that school.
Absolutely. That's why we're really doing our due diligence to overly communicate. We really want to make sure, in particular, elementary families understand what they're choosing. And for some families, that choice to return to a traditional school setting, not being at your home school site, may be worth that. And for other families, knowing that piece of information, that may change, or they may be considering that option differently. So we really want to make sure that our families understand their choices. That's why we're providing all of this information, not only tonight in a board workshop, but also a very detailed email communication that's coming from my office this week, holding those 3 Zoom sessions. And then again, reiterating all the impacts of your choices when we send out the information on how to log into Aries and give us those placement requests. And then we're always available for questions, emails, phone calls. Dr. Lepore and Mr. Larson are really fantastic. They have excellent support in the office as well. So we really will do our best to make sure that we can give our community the information they need to make an informed decision that they're comfortable with for next semester.
So, just real quickly, in understanding this and the impact on families, if I have 3 children and I say I want to go back to brick and mortar, it doesn't guarantee that all 3 of my children, I may still have 2 at LosAl Home. They're not guaranteed a placement by family, right?
That's accurate, Mrs. Davidson. So much like we do during the school year, though, we are going to do everything we can to place siblings who are at the same schooling level at the same school site. So that would probably also be a personal phone call if we found ourselves with 2 siblings at the elementary level, reaching out to a family if we didn't think we could accommodate at the same school site, to make sure this is something they would still want honored, even if their children were split at different school sites. So we believe we're very in tune with our community, and we really do want to serve them and where we think our children will thrive and families will be happy. So anywhere we feel that we need to reach out and get more information or engage our families, we'll take the opportunity to do that.
Dave, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and Andrea, thank you for, we've taken the road less traveled, and you have certainly put in the hours to put all this together to give our parents and children choices. And I just asked this question, how has our attendance been for this? I know you hear all these horror stories about other districts that aren't having a good response. Just curious.
You know what's really interesting is we have the best attendance to date. So in both our remote and on our on-campus, we have better attendance than we've had in years past. So it's very interesting, as one of the first thing administrators, when you visit their campus, if they oversee attendance, will tell you. I was just speaking with Mrs. Speratos at the high school who oversees attendance, and we had some visitors visiting, and the first thing she shared with the visitors is it's amazing the lack of tardies and the on-time attendance we have of our high schoolers not missing school this year. So I think there definitely is a layer and a lining of gratefulness
Yes.
and appreciation, and we're seeing our students arrive on time and in school, which is just really phenomenal.
Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, did you want to say something else? Okay, anything else? Thank you so
Perfect.
much
Thank
for
you
your
so much.
presentation.